Hi guys, I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery, and I'm located in Van.
And I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, located in Highland Heights, Kentucky.
And welcome to Wheel Talk.
All right, we're live.
We're live. Okay, continue what you're talking about, Brian.
Oh gosh, what was it? About uh how in the old days you would get speed stick when I first started using deodorant and it would come like very squared off at the top. And
Yeah.
you would have to use your armpit as a like to mold it into an ergonomic shape. And kids today they get it and they pull that plastic thing off and it's good to go. I
It's
don't know
just
about
molded.
you. I don't know about you, but I didn't wait around. I would sit there and shave it on that first use until I only had to go through it one time, but it left a real big, like soapy residue on it. Anyway, that's how it used to
You know
be.
what I always wondered? Why are women's deodorants like so much smaller? Like,
Yeah,
Because of the pink tax.
yeah. Back in the
Because of
day,
the pink tax.
there was only three, like right guard, speed stick, and in my house, and then six.
secret?
Yeah, and I would if I was in a pinch,
Secret.
I'd go in there and use it. I mean, it was strong enough for a woman, man, made for a woman or whatever. And there's something nice about that little ball, applicator rather than the old ways. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of where things have changed, I think was the thesis of our conversation.
That was the thesis. That was not the the content of it, but that it holds. It holds.
No, I think I was just talking about how a lot of the classes now have gone online and it makes the student population seem sparse or I don't know. I always liked that university setting of activity and events and people learning. I went to UT for undergrad and then Ohio State for graduate school, both getting my BFA and then my MFA. And, that was back in the 90s. And it's just things are different now.
And I'm
Things
sure
are
those
different.
universities are pretty. There's a lot of folks over there on those
Yeah, for
campuses.
sure. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Ohio State, when it was just massive, massive. But you get into your own college or discipline and it's kind of like a smaller world within a universe or something.
hmm. All right. So we got Bryan Wilkerson on the podcast today. Bryan, how do you like to introduce yourself?
Bryan, people I like to be called Bryan, even my students, I don't want to be called Professor Wilkerson or just just Bryan is how I like to be addressed usually, not Mr. or I don't know. It sounds so too formal.
No, not like Wilkie,
Yeah,
Wilker.
well, my high school nickname was Wilkie. That kind of stuck, and a lot of people that from my graduation class, I don't know who started that, but a lot of people call me Wilkie as a nickname. But we'll let that be. Back in the '90s, nobody calls me that anymore. Um, so yeah, people call me
I
Bryan,
like B Wilk.
B Dubs. Some people call me B Dubs.
B Dubs.
B-dubs.
Do you like if people ask you what you do you say you're a potter? Do you say you're a professor? Do you say you're a teacher? What?
Usually say I'm a professor, and then if they want to know more, they'll ask of what, and
Of
then
what?
of art and design.
Mm.
My background's in ceramics, but I teach at a small college where, I kind of wear many hats, which is good for me. I teach digital art, I teach ceramics, I teach drawing sometimes. And so I have all those interests and I enjoy teaching a range of classes.
So was you said undergrad and then master's, were you doing some art education or were you doing a
Now, I
specialty and then
so when
education
I
kind
w-
of just came
now
about?
I really went the fine art, and I just kind of assumed I would approach and take a job in higher education. But there was a point when I was fresh out of grad school, and in the state of Tennessee, you have to have. I would have had to have gone back to school for another year, I think, to get my certification. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then it just kind of all fell into place because I did start, thinking about looking at jobs in K through 12 programs and stuff like that, which there's some really great ones. And it's kind of come full circle because now through our college, we teach a lot of dual credit classes. And so I actually go to 2 days a week and teach a class at Oak Ridge High School And it's a fantastic high school. I mean, it's top notch, and they have a wonderful ceramic facility. So I'll go over there and teach a Tuesday, Thursday class with juniors and seniors who are allowed to take it and get college credit and high school credit. Um, and some of the best work that I get, student work, comes from that situation.
Nice. Yeah, I've never had like adjunct teachers in high school, but I guess you have some of those teachers that teach AP classes and you don't really see them otherwise. But yeah, to actually have a visiting teacher or professor come in and get that extra credit for toward college is nice.
Yeah, it's really great. I have some fantastic students there. And then I have, also the college. I have students that take it at the college as well. So I teach like 2 ceramic classes per semester usually. Um, intro and then wheel throwing. And I'm at a 2-year school, and so we it's really jammed in. And but I always feel like I have like 1 or 2 students at least that, even though we don't really have a ceramics major, that are headed that direction and really die hard. They're really interested. At least 1 or 2, sometimes more. So over the past 20 years, I've had quite a few who have pursued that and gone on further and gotten their bachelor's. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody gotten their master's. I'm not sure about that, but definitely several who've gone on to get their BFA in ceramics. And I like to think that I had a little part in that journey on their part.
Yeah,
I went to a school that didn't have a ceramics program. It was a 4-year school, but it was just a fine art degree,
Right. Just kind of a general art degree.
Yeah,
Did they offer ceramics at all, or?
they did. They did. But actually the ceramics program at the like the community college was better,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
is it like fewer students, so it's a little bit
I think
better
that the
quality equipment and stuff, or
I don't know. I just remember everybody being like, "Oh yeah, the ceramics is better there." You know? It's just weird.
so are
Yeah.
you all is your all's school partnered with a local college that people kind of go toward from there? Like local
My,
to me, there's like Gateway College, which
yeah,
is
yeah, for
close
sure.
with
I mean,
NKU, and people go to Northern Kentucky University from there.
right on. We have transfer pathways with a lot of state institutions, and you can it's now integrated where you can and it's helpful. Sometimes students don't know where they're going to go after here, but a lot of them do know exactly, like,
Yeah.
I'm going here for 2 years, then I'm transferring to East Tennessee State or Tennessee Tech or University of Tennessee. Those are probably the 3 bigger universities that are near.
Because
And
you're kind of near Knoxville, right?
yeah, I'm real close to Knoxville. I'm about 20, 30 minutes away from the west side of Knoxville. So I can be downtown in probably, I don't know, 45, 50 minutes from where I live. I kind of live, if you're leaving Knoxville going towards Nashville, I live about 50 minutes out.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean that's the big draw of that is not paying the hefty university fees for something that you're not really sure what major you want to do, or you want to get the prereqs out of the way, or
I don't deal with that end of the student experience. Like, they have questions about money. I'm like, go down to the business office. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't. I don't spend my time worrying about that. But not too long ago, I mean, been in the recent past, maybe the past 2 or 3 years. I had a student who we were sitting down, and I had an advising appointment. We were just looking over transcripts and talking transfer and getting into some of the financial side of it. And she started telling me like what some of the fees were that she was looking at coming up and paying. And I hadn't kept up with tuition. I should have, because my kids are getting closer and closer to college age. But I was floored when I started looking, and I was like, I didn't believe her. I thought she was way off. And so I had to go and look for myself. And I was kind
what
of
are
like,
we talking here?
the money, I can't remember, but I know like when I was at UT, I paid like, I think 1,200 a semester, which I even then thought was like high. Those are like,
Yeah.
those are $1994. That's pre-Bitcoin.
Pre-Bitcoin. Do they have
Well,
in-state scholarship money too? Like in Kentucky,
Yeah,
there's
there's a lot of
they call it keys
programs.
money.
Well, in the
It's
state
like
of
for getting a certain
Tennessee,
GPA, you get a certain dollar figure from the state.
I think it still stands where if you want to go to 2-year college and get your associates, you have the ability to do that for free at this point through state funded programs. Now there's criteria, there's certain things, and the problem with that is a lot of students take advantage of that, but they don't have any wiggle room anymore to take interest classes or electives. They're so focused,
Yeah.
like, we're giving you this money, you can only take these classes and get this degree. It's gotten very streamlined. And I noticed in education a few years ago, we had a guest keynote speaker that talked in great detail about, I guess it's all about completion, completion. If you look at the numbers of students who get some college and then kind of leave for whatever reason and never finish, it's a lot. It's over half that just,
But would the 2 years there be considered some college, or would that be considered
well, yes. I mean,
completing?
the goal is, like, let's say you're giving promised grant money to somebody, but they don't finish their degree. That money is not, I mean, I'm not saying it's wasted, but it's, they want to get I think it's getting a return on their investment is what they're looking for. And so I guess they make it sort of an incentive to complete your degree and finish, which is a good thing. I mean, it studies and show that it builds the economy. It builds,
That local area, yeah.
yeah.
To keep those people that got educated there to stay, and they build the economy
Yeah,
locally.
and we live in a very rural area that I serve. I'm kind of on the cusp of it, but we have, even though I teach at 2 campuses, we have 7 different campuses. Hey, this podcast is not a commercial for my college. I'll tell you
You
that.
didn't even mention your college, so I
Oh,
mean,
well, I teach at Roan State. It's you look it up, Roan State, ROANE state.edu. Uh, yeah, it's been good. I've had a lot of flexibility to teach a lot of classes and have a lot impact, hopefully a lot of students over the years.
I'm sure you have impacted a lot of people.
That's the goal.
yeah, you said 20 years. Does that mean you're coming up on like retirement, or thinking about it, or
I mean, it definitely is something that's on my horizon. And I mean, I've loved doing this, but then you get to a point in life where it's like, maybe it's time for another chapter, or what else could I do? Or, so I
I mean,
definitely
so your
entertain
kids
those
are getting
ideas.
to kind of college age almost, so
Yeah.
the
And
options are going to be pretty wide, it sounds like.
well, yeah, I do want to get them through school. So being at a state school, there's definitely in,
That.
discounts for them but my son's mom also works at the University of Tennessee. She's a designer for the legal department, and so there may be some, I don't know, you know. I
Yeah,
got plans. I got plans. Yeah, I might do, but I'm not quite. I'm 51, so like, but I have been here long enough to where it is kind of like retirement age. I have an ex-military guy in one of my classes, and he's a little bit younger than me, full military retirement, and he's coming back and having like a second round of like a new beginning. It almost feels like, he served time in Okinawa and really was 20 years, I think, in the military and kind of full military benefits and retirement. And
Wow.
I would have enjoyed that, but I think I would enjoy the retirement benefits and all that good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Is he taking the art? He's taking some of your specific classes too, the
Yeah, and
ceramics?
he's actually always had an interest in art. I think he had an interest in high school. He's getting ready to he's one of the students that are getting ready to graduate and go to ETSU, East Tennessee State. They have a fantastic like computer art program for 3D animation. I usually send students to either there or SCAD, but SCAD's super expensive.
You know what's funny
Dad.
is that I was just at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. I was
The
just at
one
SCAD.
in Savannah.
Yeah. And somebody said that it was super expensive, and I guess as far as like private colleges are concerned, it's actually not that expensive. As far as private colleges are concerned, I'm
Mm,
not saying it's not expensive, it is. But
yeah.
yeah, like when I was looking at colleges, like private colleges were completely out. And then me to go out of state for college, it was like 30 grand, you know?
It says SCAD
SCAD's
tuition
40.
2024, 2025, 41.
They
Yeah.
have a lot of programs and grants, and they do have things that like, and if you scholarship money, I've taken students there a few years ago for just to visit as an option, and I've been to both their Atlanta campus and their Savannah campus, and it's pretty sweet. I'm not going to lie. I look around at the
I've heard
facility.
it, yeah.
facilities and the quality of work. And I would definitely, if I could swing it, I think be enticed to go there because and it really, I guess it also depends on specifically what your interests are or what you're
Yeah,
hoping.
because
Yeah.
I mean that sounds like it's more graphics focused, but is it
Well,
broad
they
enough that it is pretty art?
a lot of
in a way?
filmmaking, a lot of design, a lot of fashion,
Fashion.
commercial, real big in commercial art. And that what they're really good about is job placement, and they have relationships there set up with like they'll bring in Pixar scouts who will go through and they're shopping for their next round of talent. And so, I mean, if that's your dream to work for Pixar, that might be a leg in or a way to get in there if you have the skills,
Right.
catch their eye.
And I heard from somebody who was an alum of there that they like bring in professional photographers for your classes because they want to make sure that all of the student work looks really good because it's at SCAD. So like whatever you're doing, they're like professionally like photographing and all
Yeah.
that stuff, and they have like top of the line equipment.
I haven't been down there in a few years, but like I've been traveling. So I've been going to Tybee Island as my getaway because I can be down there in about 6.5 hours. And I can just kind of like I can get up at the crack of dawn, scoot down there and be down there by lunchtime. And I just like that area. I like the scene in Savannah. I like the art. I like the vibe down there. And then I love the beach, the island, getting out in the water. And so I
Yeah.
I did almost a few years ago buy a business in Tybee and do early retirement and try to open a business, and it just kind of wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right situation. I worked really hard on the whole deal, and it kind of was. I dodged a bullet by not pulling the trigger on it, to be honest, because it kind of I just knew in my gut this is not something's off. But
B. Wilkerson on a beach, small
Yeah.
business.
what were you in Savannah for?
I had never been there, and I just knew that if I hadn't gone like at that time that I would regret it, you know? Like I've heard so many good things about it, and just and I mean it's just it really is really quite amazing, and it's kind of like a sleepy town,
Mm-hmm.
you know? It's like a sleepy big town. I always thought it was bigger than it actually is. It's only like 120,000. I wasn't super impressed with like, well, I said it on the podcast last week, but I was so mad about everything being so expensive. But it was, yeah, I was really happy I went there for sure.
What
I
all did
would
you do?
I didn't do a ton, I guess. I walked downtown and then I went and like snooped around all of the rich people houses because I wanted to see that stuff. And then
Did you go
and
down to
then
the riverfront?
I think so. Well, I went down to like one of the island places, and I only had a couple days there, but yeah, and then I went to the SCAD store
The
and kind
working
of like
class artist?
yeah, and
Yeah.
then like I was gonna do a few other things, but I was like really really pretty out of money, and and then I met somebody who like has a studio down there, and so I went to like the local art studio, which was cool.
Did you?
And
They have the Savannah Clay community, and they have that show at Big Cup Show every year called SIP.
yeah, I like went to one of the clay studios. I went to was it the Savannah Clay Community? Maybe that's what it was called.
I thought that's what you said it was.
Yeah, it was like so
But
cute. It was like checkered red in the inside, and yeah, it was cool. It was cool. The
Yeah,
people are
Rach and I
nice.
went there a few times. We really love it. I like the I like the Spanish moss everywhere on the trees and
yeah.
the squares
Oh yeah,
everywhere.
it's
It
so
makes
pretty.
the architecture is really beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hot as hell in the summer, but
You
I
know,
got
as
some
as
nice
a
character
kid,
to it.
I always wondered because I had one of my friends and growing up, his parents always vacationed at the same place every year. And as a kid, I was always like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? Why would you go to the same place every year? Because if you have the opportunity to take a vacation, why wouldn't you see a new place every year? But now that I'm older, I get it because I've been going down there for over 15 years. And it's like, I know where the restaurants are. I don't have to look on a map to drive around. I know my way around. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I know where the cool spots are because I've been looking for them for over. So now that I've gotten older, it's like, yeah, I get it. Because if you go to a new place, you don't know what's going on, really.
Yeah. And then we go
Right.
back there and try
Exactly.
to find this barbecue place that was in this old it was in an old like Airstream kind of stream. I think it was called the Streamliner Barbecue or something.
In
Something like that.
Savannah,
Yeah, and the one specific one closed down, and I think they had another location. I was like, damn, I wanted to go get that barbecue. Like I remembered it from last time. I just want to go to the same
it's
place.
definitely a town if you're a foodie for sure.
Oh man, I went to Vinny Van Gogo's, the pizza place. Have you been there?
Well, no, if I have or not.
It
Oh,
is like right down at City Market, and that pizza might have been the best pizza I've had in a freaking while. It was like New York style. The slice was like bigger than my head. It was so good. Yeah.
Yum.
Uh, I haven't eaten dinner yet.
We'll eat dinner after this too.
Okay.
So were you teaching you've only been teaching here or have you taught elsewhere before or
no,
pretty much just in there?
well, I guess very little. I mean, I've spent most of my career teaching here at this college. I guess I got hired on. Well, so here's the short story. I got hired on full time in '01. And then when I started that business that I was talking about earlier with all those boxes, I left for 2 years. And so what happened was it just worked out. I mean, normally there's no way I would ever be able to walk back into a position like that because it just the two original faculty members at this school retired because they were at the end of their career and they retired within 2 years of each other. And so when I got hired on as one of theirs, and then the other one retired and that position came open,
And you got,
and it just worked out. And they reached out to me to apply, and I applied and wasn't sure, but I had had a good history with them, and so I got the position again on the rehire. But it was not like they just said, I do have the option. You can take a year off as a professor if I wanted but it's unpaid. It's not like at a university where I could take a sabbatical. And
Hmm.
so I've never I did it that first time and I took a year off to get my feet wet and the business was doing great. And so I just said I gotta keep exploring this and see where it ends up. And then it was it was kind of a blessing that I was able to just honestly get back into the same, and they even applied some of my original years of service towards my
oh, that's nice.
yeah, from previous. So they applied that towards my tenure.
Yeah, that probably helps your pay a little bit
It
and
does,
gives you some benefits.
so as you get boosted up from like assistant to associate, that comes with a little incentive pay increase, and then when you go from associate to full professor, and I've been full professor now for a long time.
Can you
Long
tell
time.
us what classes you teach?
This semester, I'm teaching art appreciation online. And that's a class that I really, it's a bigger class and it's usually geared towards non-majors who are fulfilling a humanities elective. And it's a mixed group of students. It could be anybody, any major, but that art appreciation fulfills the requirement. I teach computer art, which in that class, and I've been teaching that a long time. I teach primarily the foundation of using like vector and raster graphics. We get pretty deep in Photoshop and Illustrator and how to use those. I just think those are the foundation for really anything if you're going to go into anything. And honestly, even my majors that want to go into something more traditional like sculpture, painting, drawing, or anything like that, I'm just such an advocate of the computer as a tool. I've
It's helpful.
Yes, I've used it for so many things for so many years, and it's been such a I've always had an interest in it so much to where when I was in undergrad, I originally went in as thinking I was going to go into graphic design, but I took a ceramics. I'd had a kind of a bad experience in high school with clay because my art teacher she was a watercolor person and she taught us this one clay project. Looking back, bless her heart, she didn't know what she was doing. She really didn't, but she tried and everything. And I had made this monster and I took a glass, like a kitchen glass as my
Mold.
as my support on the inside, and I built a
Yeah.
newspaper around it. And
Yeah.
I told her, I was like, hey, there's a glass inside there. And I guess she picked the whole thing up and put it with glass, everything. Anyway, the whole thing, I never saw it again. She just said the next time I saw her, it's gone. And that was it. That was my whole ceramic K through 12 experience. And so I didn't know much about clay, but I liked it. But I had taken every art class, and then when I got to UT, I wasn't sure, I just kind of found my way. And then when I finally got into the art and architecture building and was looking around, I was like, this is where I belong. And
Yeah.
then I took some electives. I thought graphic design. And so I was just early enough I'm just getting to the point of why I teach digital art, because it's very different. It's the opposite end of clay in terms of the technology spectrum. I mean, ceramics is pretty primitive, people have been doing it for thousands of years. Digital art is not been around that long, really. I mean, in the grand scheme of human history, but I've always been kind of a computer nerd kind of person and kind of grown up with it. I mean, it's been since the beginning. I've seen it, and I've been kind of.
Yeah, I'm sure your class. I mean, how long has that digital art class been around at that school?
Oh, the one I'm teaching, and I've kind of like adopted it. I mean, I've been teaching it since the beginning, since '99. I started. So, I mean, I can say this now, full disclosure, but so when I started teaching digital art, I had one class in it, and it was at Ohio State and graduate school. I took a Photoshop class. I would have taken more when I was at UT. They didn't even exist unless you were a graphic design major. That's it. There was no like basic computer for the artist. It just didn't exist at that time. And
Yeah.
I
I
bet
was,
that software was pretty costly then. They were like, we don't
oh,
have enough
well, I don't know,
software
but like,
licenses to go around or
I try
something.
to remember those early days when I was using Photoshop, like back in that lab, and I would sneak in there. I had friends still that were graphic designers, and they were very protective of that lab at UT, the graphic design program. And I would sneak in there and still get on there and work with it. And if they would catch me, they'd run me out of there. Um, and so I was using Photoshop, but like back then, Photoshop had like two tools, the move tool and the scissors tool. But now it's like, it's a different animal. It's got AI integrated. So I've been using it for that long. And then, but when I first started teaching it, they said, can you teach digital art? And I was so eager to get a job. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely.
That sounds like me.
I
I'm
think,
that person.
and so, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, fake it
I
till
did
I
that with
make it.
ceramics.
I was like, I can teach it. I can teach it. And so I'd had one class with this guy, Brandon Morris in graduate school. He was awesome, but even then, and so I did have some Photoshop experience, but I'm not going to lie, that first semester for me was rough. And then, and I had students who probably were honestly even better at it than me, which is kind of difficult. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
They're grown up with it even more than you are.
yeah, and so I'd say at the beginning, I was kind of, if that, one step ahead of most of the students. And the first semester or two that I was teaching it, I think I was so worried about that being exposed. And then after that first year, I taught it the second year, and I think I was a little more comfortable. And I was just more honest. And I was like, hey, listen, I don't know everything about this program, but I can figure it out. So if you come across something that I don't know, I'll know it for you by next classroom. And so that next year, that second year of teaching, it kind of went like that.
Mm.
And
That's good.
after that second year, I actually started to really, really know it. And now I've been teaching it so long, and I've learned it as I've gone, or I made it a point to really not, to know it, to really know it. And back then I was reading a lot of books, a lot of classroom in a book. This is pre-YouTube even, you know what I mean? And so I was learning these programs through most of the books. I'd go through tutorials step by step. And then I got into Flash animation, Dreamweaver, web development, and I worked, and all of those skills have been tremendously helpful in my practice. Not only for like just final product, but I also do murals and different things. And I've just done a lot of things, but having the ability to Photoshop something, rendering to make it look like what the finished product will look like.
Hmm.
has helped me out in so many ways and land opportunities for me. You know what I mean? Um, Designing murals, planning projects. I've done metal work and custom work for like iron and gate manufacturer guys that, you know, I'm pretty fast with Adobe Illustrator. I know all the hotkeys. It's just because I've been doing it so long. You know, I try to get my students to do this because a lot of them are video game junkies. As a former video game junkie myself who let all that stuff go, you spend hours doing it. And I tell them, I'm like, listen, treat Photoshop like I treated The Legend of Zelda. You know what I mean? You got to find every coin, every secret, every trick, every tip, you know? And if you just take half of your time away, whatever you're playing these days, I don't know. I don't keep up with video games
I
anymore.
don't either. I don't I don't know what's
Did you ever used to play at one point?
I used to play like Call of Duty and stuff like that.
Right, right. Did you ever wake up one day and just be like, this is a major time suck? And then when I'm laying in my deathbed, old and gray, I'm never going to wish, God, I wish I played 2 more hours of Call of Duty. No, but I will wish I made another pot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
And
think it was availability when I was in I kind of stopped it right after we got married and we moved up here and had an apartment. And I did not have a studio at that point. I had to go back and forth from my parents' house in Louisville, and that's the only studio time I would get. So once we got a house and I had a studio, then I was off to the races. Okay, my time was dedicated to something else now.
right.
So,
I mean, what happened was I didn't even have a TV in college. You know, I just didn't. I would either work or I would want to be making artwork, and that's just how I spent my
hmm
time. I'd go to the movies sometimes, but like I didn't even own a TV on
I
purpose.
didn't either.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. But
Yeah.
and then I had kids, and you know, my kids wanted video games, and I relapsed, man. When Brody was like about 4, we got a Wii, and I got back into games again, and I started playing those Super Mario, like Mario Galaxy and stuff. And I'm just very thorough. Like if I play a game, like I'm not gonna half-ass it. I'm gonna do it upright. You know what I mean? But
right.
you do complete it. You beat every level. You find every hidden gem or whatever it is, and then at the end of it, you're left with this deep, dark, sunken hole in your
Because
chest.
you realize how much time you spent doing
Yes,
that.
yes, yeah. Honestly, there was a defining moment. I had bought this console, and I had beaten this back in the day and beaten it before, and it's like watching an old movie again. You've seen it, you know how it's going to play out. But I had bought this vintage console that would play Ghosts and Goblins, and I freaking loved that game. I don't know if you've ever played it. It's kind of a
No.
side scroller, and it was one of those games that didn't have a save. You had to
Mm.
like I'd leave it, you could continue. So I was on a 4-day stretch and I had it playing in the background and I was almost to the end. And my son, who was little, he kind of kicked the machine accidentally and it glitched. And for about half a second, I about like lost my cool. And I was like, wait, what am I doing here? What am I doing? You know, I felt like I was like addicted to Ghosts and Goblins, and I unplugged that thing, and I've never been back.
Never been back to
I we
Ghost and
used
Goblins.
to we used to beat Donkey Kong Country every single year Christmas Eve. Just on Christmas Eve, me and my sister used to beat it. And
That's another one that I got thorough. Do you find all of the coins and the bananas and everything? Like on the mine car, you got to hit it, and then if you don't, I got it all on that one.
yeah, like and then when we had Donkey Kong 3, we bought the cheat book and
Mm.
like found them all. Oh yeah, we were hooked.
Right.
Hooked.
Oh yeah, that was in that era, the Wii, and then I got that console that played all the old NES games, the Super NES, and I
Oh
just
yeah.
Donkey Kong Country. That's about the height of it. I got on every once in a while. My one of my friend's sons has a PS5, and yeah, I don't know the
Yeah, I don't keep up
guy.
with the consoles. The latest console I have is an Xbox 360. I don't even know there's probably been two of them since then. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like between computer art and teaching this and all the email crap I have to deal with and everything else, it's like I get my screen time and then some. I don't want to spend it anymore on a video game.
Right. Yeah, I would
Yeah, that's
suspect a lot
true.
of folks aren't just like eager to dig into Illustrator. Like if you don't have a project or like a goal in mind and you're like is there a more efficient way for me to learn how to use these tools
I
versus like,
think
ooh,
that's a
like I
great
have this
way.
idea of what I
Well,
want to do. I don't know.
I think a lot of them, that's how I originally learned was I made fictitious projects like go through the,
Yeah.
I mean, it's now with YouTube. I mean, it's gosh, and that's true for everything. I mean, I honestly feel like academia is going to change real drastically. Everything is. The whole world is going to change real, like,
Because the amount of automation that can happen without you putting too much,
yeah,
like you don't have to repeat the steps. You could be like, this YouTube video shows me how to do it. So why do I need to like follow along and do it as well
right. And I've seen
to
a lot of
register it in my mind? Like,
bigger companies, Fortune 500 companies, have a lot of them have lifted their. There was a long span of time that a lot of jobs were requiring college degrees, and a lot of those have lifted those because I mean, can you do the job and demonstrate that you're skilled at this? And I mean, that
Yeah.
thanks to YouTube or whatever. I mean, there are people who know Blender inside out, never been to college. You know what I mean?
hmm
Like, and I've seen that too. Like one of the creatives at this event who was a talent scout for uh what's it, Roman Studios. I think they do like Simpsons and family. I don't know. They're big animation house. He was saying one of the questions that one of the students asked was like, what is the number one thing that you look for in a candidate? And I always go back to this. And he said, at the end of the day, we'll pick somebody who has just a killer sketchbook over somebody who's knows the tech side inside out. We can teach them that. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
inside.
like a personality hire, or like a fit, hire for fit, or hire for like potential
Mhm.
versus somebody that's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean, you might know every button on the program, but that don't mean you can make good art. You ever heard of the program 3D Studio Max?
hmm
It's a big 3D modeling program. There's like Blender, Maya, Cinema 4D, Studio Max. It's a big one. And I was in Seattle visiting friends, and I was at this Christmas party. A friend of a friend, a guy I went to grad school, and we went over to his house. And he was younger than me, just a little bit younger than me, I think. And I finally when we were talking, but I got into his house, and I was like, man, this guy must have won the lotto or something. You know what I mean? Like I was like, what is this guy? I finally got comfortable and was talking to him. He's a very down to earth, normal guy. And we were sitting in his kitchen, which was like state of the art. It was like being in a restaurant kitchen in his home. And I was like, what do you do? I was like, what do you do for a living? And he goes, I'm kind of semi-retired. And this is like probably, oh my gosh, my kids weren't even born. This is close to 20 years ago. And we were
and he
talking.
was younger than you at that point.
Yeah, so I'm 51. He might have been a couple years. He was right around my age. I thought he was younger. He might have been 2 years older. I can't
So
remember.
he's barely in his 30s.
Yeah, barely in his 30s.
Okay.
And he goes, well, and he gave me the whole story. And we were drinking this drink called Glug that they make. It was like this holiday wine type. I can't even remember, a warm wine drink. But he was like, he goes, I used to be like a pro, and I'm sure he was downplaying this a little bit. He goes, I used to be a produce manager at a grocery store, but me and some guys created this 3D modeling program, and we kind of sold the rights to it and everything. And I'd been teaching computer art for a while at this time, probably good 5 years, and I had used the program. And he told me the name of it, and I about like spit the glug right out my nose. I was like, he was like 3D Studio Max, and when he told me that, it'd be like, I mean, it's almost the equivalent. Like, yeah, you ever heard of Photoshop? Yeah, I created
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, hey, come here, I'll give you a copy of it and everything. And I went into his office, and he had all these posters and stuff. And I was like, you ever use it? He goes, I couldn't even make anything with it. You know what I mean? Like he was not in that side of it. He was totally back in coding. And he said he had one of the first, he was just an early on tech nerd, you know what I mean? And
Early adopter. Well, it sounds like he built it, so
he
he was in
built
the
it.
founding group that
He was a
built it.
programmer, and he said it was him and 6 or 7 other guys. And he was, I'm sure, like being very humble about how smart he was about all this. But he said they would all work on what he called modules. Like he worked on a part of it to make the
Hmm.
whole thing work. And he said then they
Right.
extended on T1 and put it all together. And then I can't remember the company that bought it out, and then he was just still on board kind of as a consultant. But he had just taken like his family to I don't know, like an overseas snowboarding trip from Europe, his whole family and everything. And I was like, man, maybe I should make a 3D modeling program.
You got to make the next thing that you
Yeah.
know is going to be in demand.
uh, yeah, I'm
The
working
next
on
thing.
it. I'm working on it.
So how much of your own work do you get to make these days?
This past year has just been challenging because I moved to a new studio 2 years and I tried to do it without ever slowing down my studio practice. And it finally just caught up. Like I haven't even built that kiln yet. And sometimes I think you just got to slow down a little bit and get some stuff in order. And I'm trying to build a new house. And so um, it's been a slow, I would say since June, slowed down a little bit for me, or I've not been able to be as productive. I've just been so busy with things, and then I've not been able to keep up.
Do you, when you do get that time, does it spark right back up and you're
Oh
like
yeah, no,
you
I
got that fire going and
got
you
the
you know
ideas.
it,
I'm
you've already
behind.
got the
Yeah,
ideas flowing,
yeah,
or
I'm behind. I can't. I mean, like, yeah, just let me at it. I have tubs, like a few tubs of totes of like plans.
oh yeah. So
Yeah.
what do you when you go back to it, like what do you start with? How do you know what to start with?
Well, I think I've developed a library of kind of characters and imagery and stuff that it's so second nature. But I find that like to keep my interest in the studio, I got to keep it fresh for me a little bit from time to time. And so, I like this upcoming show at Companion Gallery I've done for years called Last Call that focuses around like spirits and just I love that show and I always like to do something that's really kind of unique and over the top that's different or just challenge myself. And if you look at the every in it's not like there definitely is a common thread I think of stylization to my work, but I try to push myself into like, okay, what can I come up with? And it happens fast. It comes up pretty quick after Christmas, so I'm already in the works of kind of like planning on that. um, Impostors 5, we're working on that.
Mm.
That is happening. I've been talking with Mike, Regan, and Beth about getting the details, and we'll be making an announcement on that um, real soon.
Can you explain for people that don't know what
Yeah,
Imposters is? What is
yeah,
that about and how long has it been around?
uh, that's a cup show that we do where it gets kind of came from an idea, and I've always had an interest in that. So I'll back up a little bit to a story, and I may have told you this before at some point when we've hung out. I don't know, but
Maybe.
when I was in graduate school up in
But you
Ohio,
haven't told me.
no, I haven't told you, and so this one's worth telling the books. But I there was a store, and I've always just liked kind of thrift stores, junkie stores, odd, just come across, just like that little monster I got out of your backyard. I'm just drawn to
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
stuff.
what are you doing with that?
You'll find out. It's in the list.
It's on the list. It's in the
Yeah.
bucket.
Um, so that there was a Big Lots back in the day was also called Odd Lots, or the one in Columbus, same store, but it truly was an odd assortment of stuff. It's really more polished, and they kind of are more just a big box store now. If you ever go to Big Lots, I don't know. I
Yeah.
do on occasion, but the one in Columbus used to be kind of just kooky. You never knew what you were going to find. And I was in there one day shopping, and it was over there on. Do you know Columbus?
Not that
Yeah.
much.
It
Oh,
was
no, no.
it was on Olentangy. Anyway, not far from when I was in grad school, I had a pretty small circle that I stayed in most of the time that was around my studio. I rode my bike a lot to places. And so, but this Odd Lots was over there and I was checking it out, and I just happened to come across this canister of it was a porcelain canister, and it came in a little cardboard box, very kitschy. But what caught my eye was on the outside of the package, it said handmade porcelain canister. Opened it up and looked at it, and I was like, feels wrong to me. I mean, there's nothing really handmade. It's very mass produced. It was like $1 something, and it was white. I can find documentation.
I think I saw it on you. Is it there's a story on Ceramic, was it Ceramics
Oh
Monthly?
yeah. You're right. I
I
did
saw a
include
picture of it now
it.
that you said that.
Yeah, the origins of that. So back in in grad school in the 90s, I bought that canister and then I took it to my studio and replicated it to as great of detail as I could. You know, right down to every like using glaze chemistry, all I could. And I took it on kind of as a challenge. You know what I mean? I was like, this is not really handmade. This is like right out of a factory. But let me make a handmade version of it. Let me really make it from like and I mixed my own clay body, trying to match the color. I mixed my own glazes. I did use a few commercial underglazes on the. It had like a carrot and an onion and a potato on top of it that were the knob, and so I did use some underglaze on that. But at the end of it, I was pretty pleased with it, and I documented it side by side. And then I was like, I'm gonna return this in the box, and I put it in the box, kept the receipt, and I returned the one that I made. And at the time, and I mean, like I'm getting like $1 something back, and I'm up at the
It's
service
just
desk, and I was, I could tell, and the guy, I was nervous, thinking like he's going to see through this. He's going to know that this is a replica.
I spent how much time replicating this
Weeks.
dollar
I've
seventy
spent probably
nine
2 weeks.
canister.
I had my thesis going on. The year of my thesis, if 1999, Columbus, Ohio, Ohio State was the host of NCECA. And so, the institutions that host that program really get sucked into kind of helping facilitate it. And the grad students really kind of do quite a bit of like just setting up. Those wheels that you see in the conference room are probably belong to some nearby school. I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, I was the volunteer coordinator that year of NCECA. As part of my graduate teaching assistantship, my GTA for that spring quarter was volunteer. Okay, you're getting volunteer coordinator, which was kind of a lot of work. And like, I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't something I'd want to do again. And it was quite a bit of time suck when I was trying to put my thesis together, but it all worked out. It was good. And so I'm doing all that. But in the midst of all that, I find the time to replicate this little canister, and it is in ceramics monthly. And I was real nervous about returning it, and I thought that like I don't know, there was an element of like kind of like what's that movie, Thomas Crown Affair, where he takes the painting back, and it's a hoax. But I mean, this is like $1 something item, and he's like he opened the box and he goes, "Is there anything wrong with it?" I was like, "No." And gave me my money back and the receipt, and out I went. And I was like, "Ooh, pulled that off, no problem." And then I got more ambitious, and then I was like, "Okay, what else can I do? What else can I replicate? Ceramic can get away with." And so I did a whole series of those top pieces that I think I felt like I was being the Robin Hood of the craft world. I was like, I'm going to give one person out there a truly handcrafted porcelain. So in my mind, I imagined them taking it back and putting it back on the shelf to sell. Somebody unknowingly buys that, like, this one looks a little weird, but I like it. Because you could, side by side, you could tell that, like, this one looks different than the others.
Yeah, it's
Just
kind of like the stock image. It's like the burger at McDonald's doesn't match the
right,
package, what you
right.
actually
Yeah, they
get.
show that cheese one, and then you get the one. It's like, did you throw those pickles on there from across the room? So anyway, I did a whole series of those, and I don't know, the aspect of somebody. It also, I think, brought into question like, how do we place or assign value to objects? You know, is it more valuable? Does it become more valuable when someone realizes, hey, somebody spent a whole bunch of time on it, but the whole fact that someone was rebuying this piece for $1 something that I had spent a great deal of time handcrafting and laboring over, um, and then how would they treat that object? You know what I mean? Would it that,
Yeah.
and would they treat it differently because they just think it's a run of the mill ceramic? So um,
Did you sign it like secretly somewhere?
oh yeah, I signed it loud and clear on the bottom, big with my name on the bottom.
I
Um,
need you to become like uber famous so that we can find these pieces. And you've
I would,
documented every one of them,
I
right?
would love to be able to track that down. I was telling you that story too, where, again, in grad school, I did that. That woman got really mad because I didn't think anybody would even think twice about it. But I had this. The other thing I've done many years is the NCECA Cup sale. And
I
so
remember the
Mm.
story.
back in '99, I had my own cup. I had my own cup
Oh,
that I loved and I really worked on. But there up in Columbus, there was a what was the name of it? Columbus Clay. They had this huge greenware warehouse, very vintage looking stuff, still in greenware. And I bought this mug that said "Potters do it in the mud," and it had a big old picture of like mud, and then it had two sets of feet, one going up, one going down under the mud. I just thought it was funny. So I think I got it back to my studio in grad school, and I carefully polished that fetal off and sanded it down, painted it up real beautifully, clear glazed it. But in the bottom of it, I scratched P. Volkus. And I not as like I was trying to sign it as him, but I thought of it more as an homage to his legacy. And I just put it in the cup sale, and I might, and then uh here's the funny thing though, is like I didn't really even have a phone back then in my apartment in '99 or '98. And my mom, the only number I knew was the art department phone number. And so like if my mom needed to reach me, anybody, if there's an emergency, let's say somebody cuts their leg off and you got to go to the hospital because your cousin's in there, that's the number, was the Ohio State Art Department. And so I wrote that number down on the donation sheet, and I wrote P. Volkus, and that's all I wrote. And I donated it just as a joke, man. I thought it'd be funny. People go through and look it up. Anyway, and I put a ridiculously high price. I can't remember exactly, but I was like, nobody will buy this.
It's all getting donated,
Well,
It's all for the good of NCECA.
someone did.
yeah.
Someone did purchase it, and I wasn't associated with it, but Mary Jo Bowl, who was awesome, she was one of my faculty members at the time. And this is like a few weeks after the dust of the conference had blown over and settled down. And I'm back to like getting my thesis show together, hard at work in my studio. And MJ walks in there and was like, "Hey, I need to talk to you for a second." And I was like, I could tell in her tone, I was like, something's up. And I was like, "What's going on?" And she was like, "Did you put a cup in the cup cell with P Volkus on the bottom of it?" And I was like, and I immediately got like real panicked. And I was like, "Yeah." And she was, "Well, I just got off the phone with the woman who bought it." And I was like, I was real nervous. I thought I was in big trouble. Um, and she said, "Well, listen," she goes, "I defended you." And I said, you know, and she said the kind of the same thing. I think she defended me and said, "Hey, that money goes for a good cause." And like, what, like how, I don't know. She kind of stood up for me. But at the end of the conversation, she goes, "I do have one question. Why did you put the art department's phone number down on the slip?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I messed up.
I didn't know any other number.
But whatever that woman paid for it, if I could track that down, I'd buy it from her for whatever she paid for it.
What can you
She thought it was
explain
an
who P.
investment.
Volkus is? Can you explain who that is for the
Oh,
people that don't know?
well, I mean, yeah, Peter Volkus. And I had met him in Anderson Ranch. And I mean, he's iconic, man. He is kind of I guess, the abstract expressionist. He was kind of considered, I guess, I mean, he's in the art history books, and uh, he's just,
Peter Volkus.
all those
Was he
guys.
alive? Is he alive still? Like
Oh,
He died in 2002, it looks like.
2002. So he was like past dead at this point. No, it
You
was
said
1999. So
he was alive. But he was, I mean, I saw him a few times. He was very active, very around, very, when the summer I was in Anderson Ranch taking a workshop with Richard Notkin, it was '94, I think. And I went out there to take mold making with Richard Notkin. And you're talking about one of the best decisions I ever made was taking that class. But during that time, Paul Soldner was there teaching a workshop. Peter Volkus was
mhm.
teaching up a workshop. These are like still to this day, just iconic legends in the ceramic community. Um, Anderson Ranch was a cool place, and so I was there 30 years ago. It was when I was 21 years old. So yeah, it was '94. I specifically remember I turned 21 while I was at Anderson Ranch.
Oh.
Wow.
Did Soldner have a naked party for you?
I didn't take his workshop, but what I remember of it was I think it was called the Paul Soldner Experience. And I think it wasn't just clay. I think because it's kind of like all these places, you go off and do your different class, but there's a communal eating area and you kind of chit chat and you hear other things. But I think they were doing a lot of crazy stuff. I think, probably who knows? He was a character. They did a lot of things.
He was in.
I was not part of that group though. I was still
You're like, I gotta save my ass. I was a part of it.
I was not a part of that. I was still young and innocent at 21. It was different times, so I didn't have the internet like you kids did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had the art department phone number and your parents' phone number.
No, 94. I went in grad.
Before
This
that,
is
yeah.
undergrad. I got a scholarship to take that workshop, and I drove. I hadn't even flown at 21. I had never taken that flight, and I don't know. I was just like, I'm gonna drive, do some sightseeing. Um, that's a trek from Knoxville to Aspen, or Snowmass, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So wait,
Anderson Ranch is in Snowmass, Colorado, right?
Yeah, which is like just adjacent to Aspen.
Aspen.
Okay.
You know who else famous that I saw there in
Who?
'94 in the summer? I was at there. I don't know if it's still there. I have not been back since. So it's been 30 years since I've been back. But there was Aspen was amazing. I remember that pretty vividly. And it was just like, it's kind of like Disney World. You know what I mean? Where, my town, you go find a gum wrapper or two on the sidewalk. You might find a beer bottle thrown in the street or something. But like, and the Aspen is like, I mean, manicured downtown. It's really beautiful. It was when I was there, and I imagine it's only gotten.
It still is.
And I was in this cool store. I remember that was like a cafe and a bookstore, and I just wanted to check it out because it was highly recommended. And I'm in line, and in front of me is Don Johnson.
Don Johnson?
Yeah, you ever seen Miami Vice, the old school, not the movies?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that name
In a
now.
lot of movies. He's in so many things. He's in The Hateful Eight. You ever watched Eastbound and Down?
Yeah.
He plays his dad.
I remember him from Django Unchained and
Yeah.
yeah, Knives Out.
I was kind of like, it was just weird. I was like, like, oh my God, there's Dolph Johnson.
Yeah, Aspen's like so hoity-toity, like rich
He looked,
people.
I'm not gonna lie, he looked like he had kind of just rolled out of a rough night.
Maybe he
Like
did.
he looked like he'd rolled out of bed and just walked down and like, I'm Don Johnson. I'm gonna go get a cup of coffee.
Well, he is a human.
Oh yeah, he's great. I think he was married. Who was he married to at the time? Melanie Griffith, I think.
Melanie Griffith, 1989 to 1996.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what it says on
Yeah,
Wikipedia.
yeah. Who knows? But he's a legend.
That's
Don
amazing.
Wayne Johnson. Not Dwayne Johnson, but Don Wayne Johnson.
But Don Wayne.
So wait, what is the Imposter Show now? That was the beginning of it.
The origin. So I've always had an interest in kind of that challenge. I like the technical aspect of trying to do that. And so I think years ago, well, this is our fifth one. And so probably about 7 years ago, I just kind of concepted that out. And I think I reached out to people through social media that I thought would be fun participants. And the whole premise of the show was like, we're going to put everybody's names in a hat and and replicate each other's work. So unlike typical shows, where there's all this promotion and build up, and there's quite a bit of a secrecy because we don't show anybody. No one is allowed to know who has each other's names.
Right.
And the big reveal is when the show happens. So there's hints and things like that along the way, but none of the participants know who is replicating each other's work. And so part of the, I think, success or what we look for is you've got to have a defined style, right? And you have to have a presence in social media. Just you know.
It's pretty much a social media show for the most part. Like that.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
we've had it physical before, but we found it the current format, and it's still we're still perfecting it and trying to make it better every year for everybody involved, collectors, the participants. I mean, it just started out as fun, and we live in a time where like part of our practice now is where you got to make a video of your process. You got to show people what you're doing in your studio and look at this cool thing that I need to do so you can get more likes and all that stuff and grow your presence and build your artistic brand. And so a lot of times as I'm scrolling and I'm enjoying seeing this stuff and different people are doing it, I was like, I want to try that. I want to try that. I might not do it the same way you have, but it'd be nice to get outside of my own set of like rituals or practices that I do in the studio over and over again, and maybe learn something new along the way. And so I think it started as 25 artists that we just kind of swapped, and then we did the show, and that was the original, and we've just kind of continued a format of it, and it's been a lot of fun. And so
and they always get randomly assigned, right? They're not one to one
random.
swapped.
And I've always tried to be like, I've never like, I've had usually someone else is managing that part of it, or, um, once we email out those names, like I really try to turn a blind eye to all of it because I want to enjoy it as much as everybody else. And the juror, we usually have an external juror who selects the process and puts the people together, and then it's just random. We do look back at previous shows and make sure that if someone has had joined up that have participated before, but we're trying to do like just a reboot on it this year and start from scratch again. We've invited previous participants, but I think on this 2025, which is Impostors 5, we're gonna kick it off and kind of start it with a fresh approach, a little bit different, but the same format of the show in terms of you'll randomly be selected, a juried in person, and then you kind of creep on their social media and you look and get a feel for what they are, and and there's different results. Some people stick pretty close to that person's work, and then some people kind of put their own twist on it with their kind of blended work with it. But it's always fun.
Yeah.
I think when I finally reach the end of it and I say, like, I thought that this would be a funny end to it, and being the gatekeeper of the names, I thought it'd be funny if I just sent out like one person's name to everybody. So it becomes
So
like,
everybody makes the same thing.
yeah, or
Everybody makes your work.
well, it'd be funny. Or I've also like kind of a similar type show. I think it'd be funny to do like a pottery roast show where 20 people make someone else's work and has a show of it. Like, I don't know. It'd be fun.
See how different people interpret the same thing.
Yeah. There's something that, I learn something about my own work every year when I see it through the lens of someone else.
So, when I was in college, I had a professor that was phenomenal, and he was he was very iconic in the way that he looked, right? So he has like a really wide face and just like a beard that's like squared out, and he was kind of like a bigger bear, like, gay bear kind of, and like and his name is Ray Camp. And you can look him up online if you want to. Raymond Camp. And on his 50th birthday, he got 50 of his closest, or not closest, but 50 artists that he like really respected. And he sent them all a little wooden doll that was shaped like him. And then every artist did like a rendition of him. And then he ended up making a book out of all of the like pieces that were made. And it was so cool. Like, that kind of reminds
Not a
me of
clay
that.
guy though, right?
No, he's a graphic designer.
Hard
But
reference.
He's in environmental design. I'm looking at him right now at Cal Poly
well,
Sonoma.
yeah, well, the environmental design program is part of the graphic design program. That's where I graduated. They have a really fucked up art systems there, so um they don't really know what they're doing. But environmental design was like the umbrella over industrial design. Well, not industrial, architecture, landscape, and graphic. So, but yeah, it was fun. I think I love that idea of like having everybody do the same thing and seeing how different. Yeah,
Yep, that's him.
that's what it looks. And seeing how different people like present that, you know?
Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely.
So how many artists do you have in it now, Brian?
I
Yeah.
think
Said it was 25.
just to manage it, I mean, it's kind of a passion project. It's definitely a lot of work for what it is, and so we're trying to figure out a way to where everybody feels like they're leaving, because the core team, like Beth, does a tremendous amount of work. Beth Harden and so much work. She has been truly like intrinsic in putting it together because it's not horrible, but it does give me, and I don't want to really, I'm not interested in being a gallerist. That's not what I wanted to do. But like, I took it on just because I thought it was such an interesting idea of a show that I believed in it enough. And um, we're going, it's just fun. It's all in good fun.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because there's like two or three of you leading it, and then there's usually what 30 to 40 artists now
we
that
have 50.
participate. 50?
So it's about 100
Oh,
cups usually 2 cups by each artist. Um,
that's a
I'm not
lot.
gonna lie, until you know who you get, and I mean, it's not like it's truly random. I can't remember what it is. I always Google like random thing and I put in the list, and I mean, it does it for me, and I don't go through, and I'm sure people are like, oh, he's probably going through and picking whatever he wants. But no, I try to,
Yeah.
if you could be the moderator of it if you want, and you take over that responsibility of organizing all that and go back to just,
Listen, we already do pot swap. We're good.
Yeah, pot swap is a lot.
yeah. So you know how it
I
is.
I understand. Yeah, plus you've got the personalities of 50 people that have like they're artists for one, and then they're also like professionals. Like there's money involved in like doing this for a living, so they're setting aside a lot of time to dedicate to doing this thing.
Oh yeah,
Hope that there's a return on it because I mean,
that's so much.
ideally you do it for fun, but like not everybody can
I,
financially do
I
that.
I've seen just a little bit of this, through this show, and then I've hung out enough with Eric Bill at Companion to know what a lot or some of what goes into that, and it's a whole lot of.
What is up, my beloved friends? I am just hopping on here to remind you that if you want to buy a kiln, you should just buy L&L. That's it. No, I'm kidding. There's more. I would normally actually remind you about the plug and fire, but I was thinking that maybe I should switch it up a little bit and remind you about the element channels that the L&L kiln has and how fantastical they are. I actually have to change out the elements in my plug and fire soon, and normally I would be like completely dreading this and just frustrated because I know I'm going to have to spend a billion hours like pulling out the elements. The last time I pulled out elements, they broke every 6 inches, and it took me 2 hours just to change out the elements, just to like take them out of the kiln, not even to put them back in. And with the element channels that L&L has, that is a freaking breeze. And so you don't even have to worry about that. All you do is stretch them out just a smidge, and then you can put them into the kiln and they just pop right in there. And then you just stick the end of the elements into where they go and you connect them, and that's it. That's all you do. All she wrote. And it is the best thing ever. As somebody who's changed out many, 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 many elements, it's the best thing ever. So, if you have an L&L, you know, and if you don't, hopefully someday you'll get one, and then you'll know even more. So, yeah, I just wanted to let you know about that, and just to tell you and remind you that they are literally the best kilns in the business, and they're pretty cool people too. I went and visited their factory just a couple of weeks ago, and it's pretty awesome. So, yeah, you can find all of this information on hotkilns.com. Hotkilns.com. And they also have a bunch of tutorials and everything like that if you need for changing out elements, for troubleshooting, for all those things. So before you call anybody, you can always check out their website first for any kilns that you own. It's a great resource. All right, hotkilns.com. See you later, alligator.
Communication and email and
Yeah.
just
It's
putting
yeah,
out
it's
fires.
symbiotic.
Yeah.
You got the artist and the gallery owner and the people that run the shows and all that, and it's they got to work together somehow. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah Anderson did the show. I'm sure she's done it probably every year, but since she started getting more recognition, but uh one of the times I was a studio mate with her, and I remember her like it was like a pinch pot lady, and she was like, "This is a lot harder than I thought it would be." And she's like, "There's definitely a talent to this."
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot, like some of them you get like you kind of like panic a little bit, you're like, oh gosh, this is gonna be hard. Like the first year, I've done lots of slip casting over the years. I like it, but one of the years, like I got Forest Ceramico,
Oh
and
yeah.
and I was like, oh, I've always wanted to kind of like dip my toes in what they do a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. Pouring those multiple layers of colored slip and then carving back through with the
uh-huh.
to reveal those layers and stuff. And so I'd always seen it, and so I I did that process, and like if it's something that's not in your normal thing, there is a technical learning curve but that's the other great part of the show is that like when you see the work that the people produce, that I think it just goes to show you like how skilled they are. You know what I mean? It's like they can,
Yeah.
when they pull that off and it looks so great, it's like it somehow just confirms that their own work, like they're very intentional. And I think that's what
Hmm.
one of the things I look at is like, or talk about my students is with ceramics, especially you take an intro class and these students are throwing these just horrible wonky pots, and you're like, just wedge that back up, and they're like, no, I love it. And it's like I'm like, it's not. They're like, it's artsy. I'm like,
Right, it's organic. There's
no, it's not. It's terrible because you don't know how to do it right yet. And so it's that kind of thing where it's like I talk about. It's not that I don't like wonky pots. I do, but I like them done with a certain finesse and intention, and like you know, I think
You got to learn the skill before you do it.
you got to do it right before you do it wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
mhm.
And so, but the skill level of the participants and what they achieve in that show is always impressive. It's always cool. It's always fun. Nobody knows. It's a big reveal, and we've all been working towards this for months
Yeah.
now because we let the participants know during NCECA. So that I think they're going to send out notifications this year on the Friday of NCECA, and then the show. I pushed it back even a little bit further because of the time crunch of this year. I felt of pulling it all off. I kind of built in a couple more weeks, so it's going to be it was mid-July, and I think it's going to be kind of the end of July, early August this year in terms of the show. And that gives people several months. And gosh, if you look back at
It
that,
sounds like a lot of time, but it's also like how much trial and error. Like it depends on who you are, how much
Yeah.
trial and error you're gonna go through to actually like do it justice. Because you don't want to you don't want something to be like that doesn't even look like
oh
that's
yeah,
obvious, you know.
there's no more pressure than being reviewed by your peers. You know what I mean? That's another part of it. It's like, when you're up against the scrutiny of a group of very skilled ceramic artists, you don't want to, you want to show up. You want to show up and you want to pull it off, and you want to be like, hey, look what I did. And so I like that challenge of it. And I do. I've always I had Tony Young's one year, and I've never really done a lot with, I had never done his process of like those easy screens that you can, whoa, hold on.
Well,
Motion
you didn't move quick enough.
well, it cuts off, and sometimes I'll like to get it or whatever. But yeah, I ordered some of those screen printing screens through Mako does them. They're awesome.
Yeah, I think so.
Speedball.
Speedball.
Speedball does, but I think
Speedball.
Mako might because he's in Columbus. He's near Columbus, and Mako's near
I
Columbus.
went exactly because whenever I went back to his Instagram and I found where he talked about it in one of his posts, and so I got online and ordered them. But they're really cool. You can take, I think you get like an 11 by 14 page of any of the artwork, and so I just laid all my stuff out in Illustrator. And hold on, I'll find it.
And then you had to try to because he uses some transfers now. He's got
Well, he
some
does. I
underglazed
saw, yeah, he
screens.
started his own line of underglazed transfers, but I like those little screen printing screens, and they have a medium that you add to your underglaze, and it kind of thickens it up a little bit to like it's more of a like a printer's ink. And then you
Right.
can just take like a mud tool rib and that little screen, and I mean, you're just up like screen printing right on the side of your mugs, and they work great. And so that was a lot of fun, and that was something that I had never done, and I kind of always had an itch to try it. And so I like again that part of the show that gets you outside of your routine. And not that I'm gonna make, and hopefully you when you learn that, it's something that you just put in your mental
Your tool
box of
belt.
tools that you can work with, and you might use it in another way at some point. So I think that challenge
Yeah.
of it is a lot of fun. But it is a lot, I think some people do it like if you look at the amount of work, like Renee went, I mean, all in. And
Renee Lepresti.
yeah, and it was just incredible. The test she did, Lori Phillips went the year that she participated, and it's just beautiful work. And she really put the time in to kind of honor that artist. But I think after it, she was like, hey, this is I can't do it this year because it's a lot of work, a lot of pressure. And if you do it right and put the
Yeah.
time,
You're like setting that bar for the next
for
group.
sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have a lot of people that have atmospheric pots?
Uh,
Because I would guess
do
those
have
would be pretty
some.
hard to replicate without an actual.
Simon Levin was in it this
Okay.
year.
Yeah.
He does a lot of wood fire stuff, and so it was great to see him in there. Yeah, we have had some of that. Mike Stumbers has done it before, and he does soda firing, and so. Uh,
Yeah.
but that hey, what do you figure it out? And most ceramic people usually are in a network at that point, and even if you're not doing that, you might know somebody or know somebody who can
Yeah.
fit a mug or two in a firing during that time, or if you wanted to. I did that one year, I think. I don't have a soda kiln, but I was able to get in on piggyback on another firing.
Yeah. So we met each other at the soda firing workshop at Isaac's. What did you, and then you helped me build the one here.
Yeah, I think, and again,
What'd you like about it?
uh I think I was ready to just add another dimension to my own work. And I had been in on some group firings that were like I'd put some pots in and some work that I had made, and I just was like kind of enamored with the results. You know what I mean? Like I think it has kind of some of the allure of what you get in Raku, which I've done a lot of. Just the unknown, the flashing, just those things that are unique to that process. But when you can apply it to like functional work, it's just really awesome. It does things that there's nothing else like it. And so the interaction of that firing process with things that I had already been doing. And so um, but I'm behind, like getting that kiln built. Yeah, I've had just construction projects of just like renovation on
I mean, building a house is quite an undertaking, I bet.
yeah, I
So
know, and it's been
I don't
slow
know how involved you are in it, but
uh as much as I can be. It's got an underground layer.
an underground layer, like a bunker.
My contractor was like, yeah, we'll put it in, but you got to dig it. And so I've been out there at night.
Just full day at work and you go back to digging.
Yeah, by hand.
Ground's a little hard these days. It's getting
It'll
colder,
work out.
so
I've seen Shawshank Redemption about 28 times, and it's got like I got one of those little rock hammers that he used.
little by little.
So
How
yeah, I mean but yeah, I'm still close. I mean, I have every ingredient I need to make that kiln. But I want to build mine I want a covering on mine.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
You,
that bad being under the tarp because I mean, it's sealed, it's good enough. I don't spend a lot of time taking the tarp off and like if I was firing it every other week, it would kind of be cumbersome.
how often do you fire yours? You've rebuilt that one that we built up at your place, right?
I just put new chimney bricks on it so that they're actually square.
Yeah.
If it was me, I probably wouldn't. I would have. I kind of regretted getting some of those seconds bricks, but
Really?
yeah.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
I got a whole,
Surprise, surprise.
I got half of,
Ryan regrets getting something cheap.
I got
I
the other
love it.
half of those seconds.
And
What's,
I
what's
had to get an extra bag of the castable too to make sure that I
level it?
put
Go
the
through with a level and put a little bit.
well, not for the firebox. The firebox was too thin. I didn't have enough castable to fully lay the firebox out thick enough to where it wouldn't crumble because it's getting a pounding from the burner constantly. So
So what we're talking about right now is that where Ryan and I met, and we took a class out at Isaac Shue's place where they brought out Kevin Kowalski, who teaches a class on converting. Is it a 1027, right, Scott?
yeah, let's go
Into,
1027. So a 7 cubic foot kiln,
yeah,
Seven cubic, yeah.
making
which
it
is,
into a soda kiln.
and I mean, when we did that, like honestly, we were supposed to bring bisque, and I was running behind because I teach Governor's School for the Arts, which is like my entire month of June is just gone, and then
We
uh,
did it in like early August,
I
so
know, but when I
yeah,
was up
you
there,
had
I
crunch
teach at
time.
MTSU. I got to become friends with one of their sculpture professors that was teaching metal casting, bronze casting. And I got to talking to her one day, and she goes, "You should take the class." And I was like, "Man, I don't know." And I was like, "I don't
I
think."
remember you saying you took some you were doing some.
And then at the last minute, I kind of was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take it." And that was just probably, I mean, it was a lot to take on, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it because, um, and I'd like to do more metal casting. There's a lot of parts of the process that having a background in just being a maker in clay, I picked up pretty quickly. But yeah, so I was taking that class, and then I left, and then I drove back. Yeah, that was a rough weekend, but I left with greenware, and I left Monday with soda fired work in my hands.
Hmm.
I got
Yeah,
there.
you were able to, I think you bisque fired it right when we got there,
And
right?
I was still putting the finishing touches on it. And we
Because we
set
got there Thursday and then we built it Friday, fired it Saturday. So
but
built it Friday, loaded it Friday night,
that
and
was
then loaded it
impressive. So I
Saturday.
mean, uh,
I think it was something like that. Maybe it was a day shifted. It might have been got,
yeah,
started
no,
building
he
Saturday.
had lined the rings prior to the workshop, correct?
Yeah, I put the castable on the
Yeah, the
inside of the
castles. And
soft
so we
brick.
what we did was grind them, put that together, build. But we did build the
Pretty much built the whole thing in
yeah, yeah.
like, I don't know, 6 hours
So
maybe.
it's always nice to do something like that in ceramics fast and furious because it always seems like a process or a material or medium that's like hurry up and wait, you know. And I mean, like
Yeah.
it can be just so drawn out. But that's another show I want to have is like, or just I want to start a trend and do like the 24-hour mug challenge.
Dude, I could do that. I could do that.
Like,
My workshops that I go in, I single fire everything and it's out the next day.
yes, yeah. I want to see like so. There's all of this, you know, pounded in your head that you got to wait, let things dry, and do it this way. I kind of want to get it out there and see how fast someone can dial it in.
I got you. You reach out when we need to do that.
Yeah, I just think we should do find a unique hashtag and see like, but you got to prove it. You can't fake it. You know, you really got to.
Yeah.
You have to have a clock next to it or something.
Yeah,
Like you work
yeah,
Yeah.
next to the
yeah,
kiln. It's
yeah,
got a clock, and then the kiln's
yeah.
got a clock, and
Because I see these things, you know how it is on social media. There's a lot of fakery and trickery. I saw this one they built this little tiny kiln on this video I saw, and it looks like they're wood firing, and then they cut, and then they open it up and pull these pots out. And I was like, I'm calling BS on that. Because they've been fired in another kiln, and then they brought them back over into that.
Right.
I'm pretty sure is what happened.
It's not a mini rocket kiln, huh?
No, they're not getting cone 10 in that thing. It's like six little bricks but it made for a cool video. And if you didn't really know your stuff about ceramics, I think you'd easily be tricked into it. I see a few of those videos from time to time where they're doing some trickery on like they show you something and then they pull this pot out and I'm like, that's not how that works.
Right.
Yeah, that's like those videos. Like I did a video a long time ago where you put like a bisque piece in the glaze and then you pull it out and it's fully fired.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Trickery.
trickery.
There's all
Yeah,
kinds of,
you told me about the 24-hour mug challenge.
yeah, I think that'd be fun. I mean, just like, I don't know, I just to see, like to take like from nothing, it's like these cooking shows I see where people are being timed and they all get the same ingredients and like go.
Yeah, see
But
Well,
what you
yeah,
can
and
do.
like, and they do that like, it's funny because they like try to do something like that with the great
British Bake
pottery
Off,
throwdown,
yeah.
the pottery throwdown, but then like it's always just a hot, like they're like, we need you to build a 4-foot fountain that has to be done in 2 days. And we will fire it in 24 hours and it will survive. It's like, no, it
Did
won't.
they fire it in like a gas kiln too for bisque? So they're biscuing it
Yeah.
and it's not even
And they're
like,
like, your piece exploded in the kiln. And I'm like, I wonder whose fault that is. Like, it's not the potters, it's the
yeah,
person
it's like we don't
firing.
have time. We need to fire this so that we can pull it out of the kiln and we got to meet our schedule, you know?
Yeah.
I wonder how quick you could dial it in. I've got a little, what's it called? A Firefly? I don't know what it is. It's a tiny little test kiln. It's about
Firebox.
tiny, like it's like a lunchbox size. I could
Mm-hmm.
probably fit 2 mugs in it. And I don't know. There was one night in grad school I was convinced that I could fire a fishing hook in 2 hours out of porcelain. Like I kept uh never pulled it off though. Like
I fired earrings in a bisque kiln, like in a raku kiln, like so quick.
from
I
green.
green to done in no time at all. But that's going to bisque. But I've done full six cone 5 firings in 4 hours. It takes it takes 4 hours to cool down.
So
6
during,
depending on the kiln.
so during the pandemic, we left for spring break and then it was nobody came back after that. And so but we had to figure out a way to carry on. And I saw different approaches and I was kind of watching other people who were ceramic professors, how they're going to play this out. Um, and so my students were like, how can we do ceramics if we can't get into school? And I was like, let me think about it for a couple days and then I'm gonna come back with you. And so I was like, wait a second. I was like, we don't need fancy stuff. People have been making ceramics since prehistoric times without any of the knowledge.
Yeah.
And I was like, so here's what we're going to do. And I was like, for the remainder of the semester, you got four things. Because most of them didn't take any of I remember the first time I went back to that lab after the pandemic, and it was like a time capsule almost from the day we left. And because it was a while before it was reopened again to go back into. But during that time, I had like 4 different things that we were going to accomplish. And one is you got to make your own tools.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find your own clay. You've got to make something with the clay, the local clay that you find, and then you have to attempt to fire it. If you that one I was a little lenient on depending on where people lived and what that situation was. But I mean,
Right.
and I was like, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do this challenge too. And I had done every part of that before, but I had never done it from A to Z. You know what I mean? I had either taken local clay and fired it in an electric kiln, taken commercial clay and primitive fired it and all those things, but I had never just gone through the process. And so I was like, I'll do the challenge with you. I'm going to show you. And so as we kind of doing it, I made my own tools and I just made all my tools out of sticks that I found in the woods. And I took a pocket knife and I carved a lot of different shapes of sticks and things like that. And I didn't want to use any of my regular, like professional or whatever store-bought tools. I only allowed myself to use things that I found around the house or made to make my work with. The first, I did learn quite a bit of like sourcing local clay, and I was pretty like showing the whole process on social media as I was doing it. And I actually had a lot of help from people that reached out that do quite a bit of local clay sourcing in East Tennessee and what to look for. I found a lot of the, you know, those survival videos, the survival people on YouTube. I learned so much. There's some people who show you how to make just functional, simple ceramic things, but they're not doing it as an art form. They're just like, hey, I'm out in the woods. Here's how I made this. And I mean, it's nothing fancy, but it's actual ceramic. And those were helpful. But I was so proud of my own work that I made during that time, because it just was like, I don't know. It's like, man, you know what? I don't need anything to make ceramics. I don't need any money. I can
Yeah.
come here and do this. And so the only thing I did not do on my own steam was, I've never started a fire without using like a match or a lighter or some sort of thing. I've never done the old take 2 sticks and a bow, and like, I've never done that. But I thought about doing that, but in the time crunch, I was like, no, I'm
You
doing
can
this
use a
outside.
match.
Yeah.
How did you end up firing it?
So I lived out, I had property, and so I've always liked to fire. I had a pit fire outside, kind of like dugout with a stone ring. And I learned this on a YouTube guide that I watched. And so I built a fire, and a nice fire, and I set the pots on the outside of the ring, and I just burnt that fire down until the lot just completely burned down to like basically ash. And so those pots were nice and warm at this point, to the point where I couldn't touch them by hand. And I was able, they were green, but I was able to take tongs and carefully put them down in that bed of ash. And then I took 4, I think, logs, and I put them, I didn't stack them in sideways. I put them in like this way around the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Upways, like long, like standing up.
They were all the same size. Just because I was worried about, as the fire shifted, it might land on it or break it. And so I put like 4 logs this way, like cans, around the work. And then I started up another fire, and I burned that fire. I fed it and stoked it and fanned it. It's got it as hot as I possibly could for as long as I could. Not knowing, I didn't have a pyrometer or anything, but I knew I needed to get to a certain temperature down in there. And I mean, I was really getting it as hot as I could. And it was probably like April, and it was a nice day. And so I just kept that going for about 4 hours out in my pit fire, and went to bed. And I knew exactly where the pots were in the ash. And so they were insulated. They were under that ash. And I was able to just recall, and you can go back far enough on my Instagram, and I think I showed, and it's so perfect. I go in and I pick them up immediately. I just find them in the ash, both of them. I use my raku tongs, which that might have been one thing of cheating. If you don't, I mean, I did have raku tongs, so whatever. I could have gotten it. Well, I couldn't wait. I could have let it completely cool down where I could have reached in with my hand, but the fire
Yeah.
was still warm enough. And then I could tell the moment that I set them down on that brick, I was like, I did it. I hit disc. I could tell in the
You can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were black and they were charred. If I had to guess, I would say I probably got to like maybe cone 08.
Yeah, like raku temp.
Yeah. And but I mean, it was all just in the backyard with clay I got at the lake, with sticks I found in the woods, no wheel, no nothing. And they were modest little pieces, probably about that big. And the first clay I found was like, it wasn't really clay, it was bad dirt.
Bad dirt. Yeah.
Hey, I was able to make some stuff with it, but it didn't have any substantial.
Bad dirt.
And so I found.
Yeah, I
have
guess you'd
a-
have to like surround it with like bricks or something to insulate it a little bit more, to give it a little bit more heat or something.
Yeah. And I haven't revisited that process, but it really was like and that wasn't that long ago. What was it, 2020?
Yeah.
2021, 2020, yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago.
2020, I did that, and like, it was just, I don't know. It was kind of like, and I know there are people who do that quite regularly, and that's part of their process, but Yeah, to be able to like not have to buy a single thing and make that art form was, I don't know, I still glad that I did that. It's kind of like a bucket list type thing.
For
Well, yeah.
sure.
Plus, we always take for granted the materials that we use and all the techniques and tools that we have, and
Yeah,
like what we
absolutely.
have access to that you don't really think about. Okay, if you strip this down, like, what do you need? You don't really
Yeah.
need much.
I've watched The Walking Dead, and if that happens, I mean, a lot of people could be out of luck, but I'll still be able to make ceramics.
Facts.
Did you give some
I have a
character to
friend.
them?
Oh yeah,
Oh, go on. Of
yeah, absolutely. They look like little goons.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
course they did. That's great. I have a friend who I met in Utah and she just started to like get into pottery and she was at the Tilted Kiln out in Utah and she also lives in a van and watching her she owns some property out in Colorado and she like got really interested in trying to like forage for her own clay and all these things and so this past summer she made all of her own like wild clay and I actually sent her my wheel. I sold her my wheel and um and she like did her own pit fire and all this stuff and it was so cool
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see
I love
her
that.
just like do all that stuff. It was so cool and she just learned it on her own. It's not like I mean like I would send her things here and there and be like, "Hey, this is how you do this" and blah blah blah, but yeah, she's just so interested in that and it was really cool to watch her do it.
You mentioned the goons. Where did the goons originate?
I think from in my heart.
From in
Uh,
your heart?
yeah,
Was that your
no,
graphic design days? Your digital art coming
I,
up with it, or
well, I think it's just a lot of like input from my interests and how I've approached stuff, and I like just straight pottery. I like making pots, but uh, I think it's just weaving all of my interests and threads or trying attempting to do that. And my, I, I think my work, there's a kind of a humorous, goofy element, but I work really, really hard at it. And there's a serious side to it too. But um, yeah, I think they're kind of like, they're goofy, character based. And I just think that is a nice umbrella of a term that they can all be classified as. So I just started, I don't know, it was just branding really to think about. And for me, like, what are these? Um,
they're goons?
yeah. And I like the two O's and just playing off of, part of my work as teaching computer art is I'm like a novice typographer, or I like typography. I teach aspects of it, and I like looking at it and thinking about it. And so the word that I selected, I like those two O's. I like being able to, like here, do a little screen share. I'll give you a little free tutorial. Uh,
Do they have names?
yeah, I'd usually name all of them. They all have names. They are all, and there's a part where that's my favorite part of the process. Well, I like throwing, I like trimming. Um, but there's a point in time when I'm getting to the point where it's almost they all have a slightly unique characteristic, you know what I mean? And they that is personality. The personality is revealed through that making, and it's like you kind of find it. And I mean, there are certainly repetitive things that I go back to that I've used, but again, I think all of us as artists are trying to push our boundaries and push ourselves, and so they've grown. If you look back, you can go back. I've been pretty active on Instagram, and I like to think they've gotten better. They've gotten more evolved. Some of the earlier ones were like, you know, very primitive looking, I guess, compared to some of the newer ones where I've just like, how far can I push this? You know what I mean? Like, how much more detail can I put into this, or what can I add to it, or what can I do to improve this? And I've never made one and thought, I think I can do it a little bit better next time. I'm going to try it again. And so, um, but yeah,
Yeah, because you could easily just carve the shape on the caricature on a flat surface and it's got character, kind of like I kind of relate it to that wood plank on like Ed, Ed and Eddie, and it's just
Yeah,
like a face on there, but you've got the
Yeah.
full 3D
yeah, and it's like
sculpture instead.
yeah, and I think my original ones too, because I'm probably more of a sculptor at heart, but I worked as a pottery apprentice back in the day for quite a while with a really wonderful person named Lewis Snyder in Murfreesboro, and this was kind of in between undergrad and grad for just a hot minute, and I went up there one summer, and he wanted me to stick around longer and do like a really old school full apprenticeship, which was going to be quite a few, but I was like, no, I can't. I went up there with like maybe 2.5 years of college level wheel throwing, thinking I was like a know it all. You know what I mean? I went up there and worked for him, and he kind of set me straight real quick. And I realized I had a lot more to learn. And he was a teacher at heart. But it was during that process, I think what I was drawn to early on was because I was probably one of the more like it was difficult for me to get that process at the beginning when I took wheel throwing one for the very first time. And I was looking around and I was like, man, these people are like, they're way better than me. And I was like, I'm going to learn this. And I just made a decision. I'm going to learn how to do this. And um, it took me a little bit to get the hang of it longer than I probably, or some other people, but um, it was probably during my time with Lewis, not during college, where I really just kind of turned a corner and got more proficient as a thrower. And I think when I became proficient is when I kind of lost a little bit of interest in it or decided to go back to graduate school and pursue just, more the artistic side of working. And then I didn't make a lot of pots in grad school, honestly. I did like some really weird stuff, a lot of small, big scale, small scale, two-dimensional drawing for obviously has always been a big part of my work. Um, you know, I grew up thinking I might be a cartoonist, you know.
Oh, that would fit.
I could
Yeah,
see that. Yeah.
and I didn't uh, that was my first probably. I was obsessed with cartoons as a kid. I loved to watch them. It was a big part of my life growing up. Animation. I just loved animation, being able to tell a story with lines. And I had been drawing already and loved to draw as a kid and still do. It's a big part of my work process, plan things out. And um, so I think it's that love of drawing, animation, um, pottery, and then just trying to twist all that together into one one creation. Um, and I'm still pushing it. And so yeah, I'm itching, like I'm in need of like a vacation or some real committed studio time. And
Vacation. I like that.
yeah,
Like claycation.
vacation. I need some time.
So do you like obviously you're sustained financially by teaching. How does I suspect that, the financial side of the pottery would need to be more prominent once you're retired. Does that side of it like interest you? Does it like worry
Yeah,
you of
no,
like what you're
I
gonna
always think
make? Are you
about like it,
selling it?
yeah, I always like to be yeah, it's nice. I mean, if nothing else, it's nice to be able to find an audience for your work, and it kind of validates what you're doing a little bit to be able to be like there is a place in the world for this, and there are people showing interest, and you know, I think that was another part of like coming to terms with just I don't know, I always felt like the pottery students were on I could just tell by the other faculty in school that like painting is up here and then pottery is like somewhere down here in terms of like that. And I sensed that. And I always didn't want to, I don't know, I wanted to elevate what I was doing or consider, and I also thought it's like, I get it, you're talking about like a painting versus, oh, you're drinking coffee out of your art. Okay, well, we're over here making the Mona Lisa or whatever, you get what I'm saying. But
Right.
and so it was that aspect of like, no, I want to be treated more serious like these painters are. Um, and so when I kind of returned back and started teaching ceramics, I kind of have that digital art window of when I said, I'm gonna fake it till I make it. I really went very deep in the early 2000s in digital art to get up to speed with that. It was almost like for me, it was like a self-taught second degree that I did. And I really, plus once you get out of school, and if you don't have ceramics, takes some pretty expensive equipment to pull off, and if you don't have access to that, it's hard to make that kind of work. And so I put my money and I got a computer, and my studio time was spent learning programs, learning software, and becoming proficient, just so I
Yeah,
could
it's
do
just
it.
time at that point.
Yes. And so once I got back up to that, and what really kind of turned the corner was there was a donor who wanted a generous donor who wanted to donate a kiln, a brand new kiln, and they wanted me to bring ceramics back. That's been a long time ago. And so it was still on the books, but probably during my predecessor, it was one of those classes that kind of fizzled out down a little bit. And then they focused more on, you know, digital art, the .com boom that was just big, and the program kind of revolved around that. And so it was like a revival of ceramics at the college, and it was kind of almost me getting to build the program from the ground up again because it just didn't exist. Hadn't been offered probably in over a decade or more, maybe 20 years, that they hadn't really offered a
Yeah.
ceramics class. And so I've been teaching it now consistently for probably 15 years. And so it's like it's the dream to teach digital art and computer art, or I mean digital art and ceramics. I do feel like you out?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, how you doing?
All right.
Yeah, I'm
Brother.
right on. And so um
Plus the ceramics departments, I mean, a lot of it is pretty. There's not a lot of additional resources. Like it does take a lot of equipment and a lot of time and a lot of like you're the teacher, the leader of the department, and the studio tech, and you've got to like there's a
I mean
lot to do.
I mean we have very like kind of a small program, but it's there. And um
Yeah, you
so
got to maintain the studio as well as
it,
teach.
it's
A
it's a
lot of times,
bit
if
for
you're
me,
if it's
but
a small,
it is a lot of work. I mean, studio classes in and of themselves, it's hard to explain unless you're in it. That's the only thing I would change probably is I like the classes I teach, but my workload I feel like is a little much sometimes at the community college. It's not like a research school. I teach what's called a 5-5, like 5 classes in the spring, 5 classes in the fall. I also manage our gallery, so I'm always scrambling, man. Just
it's
always
a lot.
keep
5 classes,
it, you know.
or it seems
I'm
like a lot. I don't
curious.
know.
Are you like, I obviously think you're not, well, I don't think you're very type A, but you have a lot of responsibilities. Like, how does that, like, you don't seem type A, is what I'm saying. But like, do you feel like that's like hard for you, or do you enjoy that part?
Well, I do enjoy it, but I think also like I'm at a point where I do want to kind of focus more towards maybe my own work. It's I think as you get older, you start to shed away and eliminate like I said earlier, video games or things like your priorities become more clear
Yeah.
as your hourglass gets a little emptier on the top.
But you also like take on so many projects that make you have to be like that person, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I mean, somebody has to.
Somebody has to.
I mean, hopefully the ideal is that you're doing projects that you're excited about. Like I would guess imposters, like that's
Yeah,
not that's
right.
not just like, uh, you
No,
know.
yeah,
Right, obviously.
it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, I think most rewarding things that we do in life require some effort. If they didn't, I mean, everybody'd be doing it. Like, you know what I mean? So, uh,
And it's like super unique. The
the show,
and you get to choose like you're deciding along the way like what you want to make it and then people can surprise you with what they do with it.
yeah, it's a really fun show. And it was a great like Ceramics Monthly reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we'd like for you to do an article about this." That show's very different than things that we normally see, and so it was nice to. That was a nice kind of, I guess, pat on the back or make you feel like you're doing something right.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
It would be nice.
Bryan,
Oh, go
oh, go
ahead.
on. You're the
I,
guest.
well, I would like to think about it going back to maybe, I don't know, maybe evolving back into a physical show where they're all in one place would be kind of cool to see, but it's just the logistics of all of it that make it kind of a challenge. So right now
Because
it's
then the I'm sure the people that participate would love to see it in person and see everybody's and
absolutely.
handle it besides just the guests that come and then they see it and then they buy it and
I
like
think
nobody really sees all of it except for the people organizing it, I suspect.
I think for either number three, I think for three, I tried to pitch it to NCECA and put it under their, like, if I
Oh
could
yeah,
find
because everybody would be there.
yes, if I could find a venue and I wrote a proposal, and so maybe I just need to keep pursuing that. I just think that would be cool to have that show at NCECA and have them all physically in one place and have the sale. I don't know. That's
I mean, you'd have the
That'd
time
be
for it
so
because don't you
cool.
apply for those shows in like July or something like that prior
well, our
to
timeline for that one is I think we're going to open the applications mid-February. We'll close the applications a couple weeks before NCECA. The juror will make their final decision. We'll extend the acceptance, and I think even the name of who you have that Friday of NCECA, and then the races are off. Um, and even I mean, we do. Beth does a lot of the social media, most of the social media, and then um, so
Mhm.
yeah, it's.
Okay.
I'm
I
ex-
meant if it was hosted by NCECA. NCECA accepts proposals for exhibitions like way far in advance, so
oh right.
that timeline would probably work out pretty well
I think
for
I
giving
did the
people plenty of time.
proposal pretty much in like late, like in fall, in early fall, to see if it would even be something that they would
Hmm.
accept the proposal. But
And then you wouldn't want to be like, okay, we have all these plans to do it in NCECA, and if it doesn't work, then you're like, okay, what's our plan B?
right, so
Yeah, that'd be great. I had a question about NCECA actually. How many years have you been going to NCECA?
I went to my first one when I was 20 and in New Orleans, and it was. Let me pull the list up and tell you for sure. So I've been going for over 30. I think this past one was my 30th. Now I have not gone to every single one of them, but I think I've gone to more than not. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'll skip one, like I skipped San Diego, um, but I haven't missed very many in the past 10 years. I think
Are
just
you gonna are
Are
you
you
gonna
going
come to
to
this one?
Utah?
yeah, I'll be at Salt Lake. And then I think the year after it'll be Detroit. I'll be there.
Hmm. You're not
Yeah.
driving to Salt Lake, I hope, right?
No, I usually try to drive just because it's
You love driving, but I mean,
no, I
that's
don't
that's
like
quite a
drive,
trek.
but like I like driving my work rather than shipping it. And so it's
I'm
always
not even driving, Bryan.
yeah, I don't blame you.
I
That's too much.
So
I
going that much, like what, from your perspective, what keeps you coming back to it?
Oh man, I mean, I obviously
Because
love
it's coming up, I'm sure people are like deciding whether it's worth it to go, whether they've never gone, or if they're like,
uh
oh, is it worth it to go to Utah when it's going to be over here in the East next time, or what, you
yes,
know?
yeah, I mean that's a factor. And that is one of the things that helps being in education is I do get a little bit of help with professional development money to help fund that. It's a costly thing. Um, and so
yeah.
I I I think of it as just part of like staying connected with the ceramics community. And I've been going many years, and there's so many of them I've been to where I just have this FOMO attitude where it's like I got to see all of this, and it's just impossible. It's absolutely impossible
Hmm.
to really, and so I think the past few years I've been more selective about not worrying about getting all of it and really focusing on enjoying the things that are going to impact you and feed you the most kind of thing. So
So what would you be prioritizing this year, for instance?
I always try to see the shows. I like the demonstrations and sitting in there and watching them build that stuff. The selected artists, the demonstrating artists. I pick and choose whatever lectures I think that are going to be relevant. Um, the
But you
exhibition.
like the gallery shows the most.
Yes, I think so. I like seeing the work. I like seeing the work and the the range of work that's being made, the quality. I mean, it is exceptional work, and it's like one place to see so much great stuff. I like going through the exhibition hall, of course, and seeing like just I don't know, new tools, new stuff, new studio gadgets, all that stuff, materials, processes. That has really grown. I mean, that whole aspect of it, just like the tool industry alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that footprint
Oh, it was that
like 20 years ago?
oh, you got that camper tool pack. And if it came with the wood one, the pin, the
So there's no like tool companies in that area in NCECA back in the day?
not like there is now. I mean,
Because I mean
remember
it's
I
like
can remember
half of the hall now, and
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
exhibition is like a quarter, and then the universities are
I
kind of
can
a third.
remember like pre Diamond Core, pre Mud Tools, pre Dirty Girls, all that stuff. I mean, those are all new, like successful businesses that are revolve around the ceramic world. The Airpin wasn't there. I mean, it was uh,
Did they
Amazon.
have kiln companies and clay
Oh yeah,
companies
yeah.
there?
As long as I can remember, they've always had. Soldner used to be there, and he used to be in his booth. He had his own company, Soldner Wheels, Soldner,
Hmm.
um, very successful. I think you can go back in all the ceramics monthlies and see all of his old crazy ads and stuff if you look back in the '80s and stuff like that.
I have a Soldner wheel. I had two, and I sold one.
Does it have that pedal with that symbol on it? I love
Hmm.
that. Yeah, don't ever
But
get.
my first Soldner had a wooden foot pedal that was connected to a bike chain.
What happened to it?
That's the one she
I
sold
sold it to that
to
girl.
Colorado.
It's funny because I know that I feel like you'll resonate with this a little bit. I know that like people would kill for that wheel because it's such a classic. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
exactly why I sold it to who I sold it to because I know that she will love it and use it and cherish it. And I just didn't want to sell it to somebody that's like, I've owned 7 Soldners. And I'm like, no, I want to give it to somebody that's actually gonna appreciate this wheel for what it is and like
And get use out of it.
how it yeah, and get used to it. I want somebody to ruin it,
I see
you
that
know?
on social media that somebody made a bicycle, a stationary bike that they ride and throw on. Have you seen that video? There's
I
some,
saw that.
I might have come across that
yeah.
at one point.
Um,
Okay.
Yeah.
but
Do you
yeah,
have are you in a show this year coming up? Or like a
I
pop-up or anything like
do
that?
that. I do the Pot Stars pop up with that group of folks, and that's been fun. I haven't applied to any shows. I feel like I just got overcommit. I've just been overworked this past year, and I also have done. So I did a big mural project in the spring, summer, and then I've done two more kind of larger painting projects this fall. Honestly, that's where my time has gone. Um, is painting, and I mean, I've done like they were for businesses and like almost like sign painting on one of them, but again, it's one of those things that I kind of faked it till I made it. No one ever taught me how to paint a mural, but I know how to use a grid, and I know, and
You're good on the computer, so you can
yeah, and
mock it up to be like,
yeah,
this is
figure
what it
out
could look like.
I can use a tape measure. I know how to draw. I mean, it wasn't too hard to figure out. You know what I mean? And so I kind of just had always had an interest in it, but a lot of times I'm not painting my own creativity. I'm painting something, a design or something. You know, the murals are very similar to like public art. I feel like when you're in the public, there's a different responsibility as an artist, or at least different things that you got to consider. When you're in the gallery, a lot of the same old group of people that you see over and over that intentionally go and seek out art to view and enjoy. But when you're out somewhere, you're going to get all walks of life, whether it be public sculpture or mural or things like that. And I like that aspect that you're going to get the attention of people and the consideration of,
For the masses.
yeah. And so how do you approach that as an artist? I feel like if I'm in a gallery, I can be a little more, I don't know, like selfish, or I'm gonna make what I want to make, this kooky thing. But here's the interesting thing. Like I've done some public art in the past and sculpture. It's such a laborious process that, I think my mind works quicker at times than it takes to make something large scale, or I have to have, I have to have something else running parallel to that. If I'm working on something that's taken like a year to fabricate, that's a big investment of working on
Yeah.
something, where, um, and so anyway, back to making, I kind of want to get back into public art, but approach it a little bit differently. And instead of like thinking about it as, more diplomatic, like a graphic designer, I do want to make some things like, what would if I really want to get wild with this and really do something that kind of like is for myself, what do I see myself doing in that kind of space now that might be a little more, not, you know, uh, like a goon or goofy or something like that. People like,
Yeah, you're not just going around doing graffiti, goons everywhere.
no, not graffiti, but like a formal sculpture that is like maybe a
Yeah.
little more, I don't know, a little more humorous, a little more funny, not as worried about like, and there's lots of examples. I think that's what a lot of this whole process for me has been. An artist is just like giving in and accepting and like feeding my own interests. I think I felt this pressure or need for a long time to like, if you're going to be taking it serious as an artist, you're going to make this serious work. Like, these people that,
Yeah.
um, and I kind of like got very serious about my work, but like kind of tickled my own interests of, you've seen what I make. It's pretty kooky and goofy. And so
Hmm.
I want to keep pushing that aspect of my work in some ways and see if I can scale that up or make some large scale public sculptures that embody that same kind of spirit.
Yeah, because you've been making like mini sculptures with the ceramic pieces that are a little more attainable size wise, and then you're just
Just
like,
making
okay, what
those.
would I do if we made it 4 foot tall or bigger? And you're like, okay, the details there are going to be way
All
more
that stuff's so
noticeable.
doable. I mean, and I don't even necessarily have to make it. I follow this account. You ever followed Anchor Ball? Do you know Anchor Ball?
No.
Mm-mm.
He's on Instagram, but he's probably my favorite artist that uses AI successfully. But his work starts out as kind of AI generated, but they're turning it in, fabricating it into all kinds of stuff, large scale sculpture. I mean,
Mm.
tangible things. What is his name?
His name is Ken
Ken.
Kelleher.
Yep, Ken Kel. Yep.
Ken
I love the
Kelleher.
idea of like, I love what you said about like how, in order to be an artist, you have to be like, I don't know, like you have to be serious about something, you know? And I love that idea of doing like public art that is not serious. Because like what sculpture park do you go to where there's like you said, like a little goon or like something
I
like a
want to see
little
like a 10 foot
stupid.
tall like
Yeah, I want to
cone.
Tom Otterness maybe a little bit kind of has that quality or like that playful character in his work. There are examples. There certainly are, but I think I finally have gotten to a point where I feel uh, fine for myself to take, to do that, to go that direction in the work and be a little more like, let me do what I would like to do rather than feel this pressure like it's got to be very formal or, and
right.
I've applied to a lot of different proposals over the years for those types of projects. Like this library has but um, I don't know.
It's a mix of like somebody that's wants that personality and that like vibe of it versus like, they also have the money to fund something like that. And they're like interested in it versus like, are they gonna get pushback and people are gonna be like, how much do they pay for this thing? That's dumb.
Yeah, and
Versus like, oh, that's just fun. Like,
yeah,
okay.
um,
Well, and I love the idea of it being goofy but being really well made
yeah,
too, because it's
absolutely.
so controversial, you know?
I'm still an advocate of craftsmanship, even in the goofiest stuff. I think also like if you've ever seen like I'm a big fan of Wayne White's artwork too, and if you've ever seen his documentary Beauty is Embarrassing, I mean he was one of the kind of designers and puppet creators for the original Pee-wee's Playhouse set, Cherry, Alt Randy, all those things. And they were, they were having fun, but they were very serious about their work. And Pee-wee's Playhouse is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
The original. There's a lot of creativity that go into the set, the storyline, it's a pretty neat thing. And so, just seeing examples, I think just social media or being able to get on the internet and find that, hey, yeah, there is a need for this type of work is, I think, kind of.
Yeah, it's sought after. We need the creativity and something to get you out of the seriousness a little bit every now and then. Well, I mean, all the time, honestly.
Yeah.
Hold on,
Well,
there's something else I was going to say real quick, but
You just got distracted a little bit.
yeah, what was it? I'm not sure. But everything I do, I think starts with a sketch. You know what I mean? A drawing.
We
Most of
were, yeah, we were talking. There was a book that we read recently, and they were talking about separating the digital versus the analog, and having spaces. One space that's an analog space where you're sketching, you're drawing, but you're refining in your digital space, and you're editing and you're tweaking, and then you kind of bounce between them. And it's good to kind of have those two, so that you're not
that
distracted.
separation.
You're not distracted with the phones and the digital and trying to, just like, hey, this is what I'm going to focus on.
Yeah.
Oh, getting a little
Oh,
demo here.
I thought the screen went black for a second. And I was like, great. We lost him.
Oh, you know what? I did see one of your I saw one of your cones at Queen City Clay. It's still there.
Good.
Got
Yeah.
one of the goons on it. One of the vinyl stickers
The
on there.
Vinyl Goons.
Yep.
But yeah, I've got digital assets. I've got boxes of drawings. I've got a whole library of stuff. I've got a whole office full of old giftware that I'm going to sell. There's a lot going on during this holiday season.
There you
Yeah,
go.
a lot.
But so this program that I'm showing you right now, so, and one thing I purchased also is like a commercial vinyl cutter for stencils or for things. And so anything I want to do stencil wise, you could do right here. I do all my layout in Illustrator, and then convert those lines into a cut path. And so like those cones I do, they were originally just Sharpie, I just kind of did that on a whim. And it was kind of the
You're talking
same.
about the vinyl cut drawings
Well,
that you
originally
put onto.
they were done with a super Sharpie, like the biggest black jumbo Sharpie they make. And it really doesn't hold up that well, to be honest with you. That Sharpie, you put it on there and it looks good for like, I don't know how long, but it does fade quicker than you would think. And,
Yeah.
again, that's a whole nother thing, but that process, I just kind of over time evolved and developed it and found it much easier to use. And that vinyl that I use is like UV. I mean, it'll be there a lot longer than I will be probably. So
Yeah. We've had
Yeah.
nice little during a road trip, you get a nice little
yeah,
series of cones along the way.
I try to hit at least 4 a week, and they're making the cones quicker than I can keep up. So yeah, I want to get one in every state. I think I'm close.
Do you document them whenever so you kind of know?
Usually, yeah, I do. And then it's cool, like a lot of people ask, like, or people have asked, like, what is up with that? Or why'd you do that? Or what's up? And
It's
you know,
just fun.
well, yeah, I made up a long story one time, and somebody asked me real snooty during a workshop, like, what is it with you and these cones? And so it was just something in the tone of it that was a little, kind of like made me
Wait,
defensive. And, um, and so
wait till he brings out his sausages at lunch.
Well, I immediately launched into this whole story about how I was like, well, I grew up, we were homeless when I grew up, and we mom homeschooled us though, so we had school. And I just went into this real tearjerker story, and everybody was like on the edge of their seat. And I told this story where mom used a traffic cone as a brand new shiny one as a dry erase board to do our lessons on. And we were kind of living in an alley, and she would let me use the only dry erase marker that we had if I accomplished all my lessons in time. And then one night, without her permission, I snuck out of our box and I drew on the cone and I fell asleep
Our box.
and left and everybody's listening to this and like, oh my gosh, how touching. And I could finally tell, and I was like, okay, I'm just messing with you guys. No, that none of that's true. Uh, I just did it because ceramics takes some time, and it was almost like the same kind of joy that I get out of putting a face on a pot is putting those traffic cones out there. And I've done it, and people interact with them. People will move them. They're, I don't know. And I've thrown some. I've made them on the wheel, but it really just started kind of innocent and fun of me drawing pictures on one, and it just kind of went from there. And now I've kind of got it down to almost like a logo, where it looks like a
Yeah.
very identifiable. People people do stuff with them. People send them and they recognize it and they'll send me pictures of them spotting one somewhere. And I try to get them if I travel, if I go somewhere. That's one thing I like about them is just they're so universal. They're in every country. They're in every street. They're in all over the world. And so like it's just speaking of Savannah, my son and I did one there, I think just 2 or 3 years ago, and we were running late to a ghost tour down on River Street, the one that you hop on, hop off of this
Hmm.
bus. And we did a cone on the way there. And on the way back, someone didn't take it or anything, but they had moved it and set it up in this funny place just within like the hour and a half we were gone. And I was like, they had stuck it where it was like peeking around a tree a little bit. And I didn't move it. And I was like, who did this? Because it was on our way back from going back to the truck in the parking garage. And it's stuff like that, it's about fun. It's kind of like graffiti, but I think it's pretty innocent. And with those vinyl, I mean, I've never
You
really
could
had,
just peel it right off. I mean,
yeah, no harm, no foul. I'm not, it's not like I'm trying to mess up. Usually the cones I get have a little character anyway, and they've seen little,
they got a little
yeah,
edge to them. They got a little
I,
character.
I like one. Yeah, there was one I rescued on I-40 that was being drugged behind a semi track. It's one of my favorite. And I was watching it being dragged under a truck, and it got off, and I pulled over and got it. And the thing is like sanded down on one side, like ground. And it's one of my favorite. It's seen some
So
action.
you kept it, or did you do
Oh
it and then you
yeah.
left it?
No, I got it and kept it. That one was such a unique, like I kind of, yeah, I would. So I'm always on the lookout for those. And I can't tell you how many people tell me now, wouldn't it be funny? Like they'll see a traffic cone and like I can't look at a traffic cone and not like think of you. And I'm like, boy, that's the best free advertising ever. I mean, that wasn't intended, but like, wouldn't it be ironic, like your legacy to be like, oh yeah, you mean
If you were waiting in traffic and you just saw a cone that had that little goon face on it, that's like, that just make you smile.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was a yeah. So and I've got it down to such a process, and it's one of the I almost get the same sense of joy from that part of my practice that I do in something that takes like, I don't know, 8 hours to make, fire and do all this, right? And again, it is like a public art project to me, an ongoing public art project. So,
Hmm. Yeah, you
um,
can get one of those on there in a couple minutes.
oh yeah. Well, the real trick is just if you have one cone, then you just do the cone switch. You just grab that one and put that one down, and then you take that one home, put your sticker on. You don't even have to peel the sticker off anymore. Uh,
Mm.
and you probably know this already, but if you buy one of those orange safety vests at Walmart, you can get away with a bunch of stuff just having one of those. People think you're a
Uh,
fish. Oh, it's the cone guy, man. Let him work. He's got to pick those up. Somebody has to do
Do you
it.
have a vinyl face on the inside of the orange safety vest so you can just like flash them the face really
No, no. I,
quick?
I, I try. No, I don't. Mm-mm. I want to be. I want to be. I like.
You like a badge, like an official badge.
I like discretion. No, no, no. Yeah, I do have an official badge, but not for that. I like.
Yeah, I mean you have a little cop get up too. I mean,
Oh, I do have
you're
a
the pottery cop.
pottery cop. Yeah, that was like a 3X sale that I got, and it was like it was at this grocery outlet store I went to. I couldn't pass on it.
Grocery outlet, bargain market. Oh, I love that.
All right. We're past 2 hours here. I feel like
All right, all right. This is part one of our three episode series. So those of you who are just now joining in, stay tuned for part two coming up in the near future.
yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
a little post NCECA Imposter 5 recap.
Yes, yes. The aftermath. Yeah, that would be great actually. If you guys want to talk, let's follow up and do the post imposters breakdown.
Mm.
Yeah, let's do that.
Have you ever had anybody imposters that got a name and they're just like, I just can't do that. Like, you're gonna have to
No,
reassign this. I just can't do
we
it.
have not had that, but we have had people, and it happens. That's the big snafu of that project is people that are like
I
that.
had a name in my head of who I didn't want to get,
No,
and I
no,
got
it's
that
not
name.
that, but like people just drop the ball, and it happens. Everybody does it at some point. You get 50 people working on something, somebody's going to have something that comes up that will prevent them from being able to pull it off.
Oh, that's true.
And
Yeah.
that's disappointing for the artist that person's, because part of the excitement is not only creating the artist that you get, but seeing the reveal of your work through someone else. And so when I think we've kind of got it now where we kind of try to keep some people, and we've had some great people like Christy Cash come in at last minute and fill in and make it happen for an artist that kind of got. So there's always, that's the one kind of challenge of that show, I think, is to prevent that from happening, but inevitably it occurs.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
but yeah,
It happens. So pot stars pop up if people are going to be at NCECA
yeah,
2025 in Utah.
yep.
We'll see you around.
Yeah,
And
and I'll be participating for sure. I will be a companion for. I'll definitely show up for last call, and then I'm getting close to being able to carve away some studio time. You know what I mean? Like, and two, I think another part of it is, it's just, yeah, just life stuff. I've just had it. This has been. I think my practice. I mean, I hit it pretty hard, but sometimes life just ebbs and flows with things for you. And I've
yeah.
been I've been ebbing, but I'm getting ready to flow.
I like that.
There you go.
All right. So if folks want to find you on Instagram,
Yep.
it's just straight up Bryan Wilkerson, right?
Bryan Wilkerson. Yeah, that's probably the best place to get an inside scoop of what I've got going on at the time. And I try to
Bryan with a Y.
Bryan with a Y.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All
Thank you
right. We'll
so
see you.
much. Thank
We'll
you so
see.
much for having me.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. We'll see if maybe we get some soda fire in you for 2025, maybe.
Yes, for sure. That's on my short list.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thanks everybody for listening, and thanks Bryan for joining us. We'll catch y'all next time.
Sounds good. My pleasure.
All right. See ya. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another episode of Wheel Talk. This podcast is made possible through the contributions of all of our listeners who always ask us great questions, leave us reviews, and contact with us through social media. Thanks to all the fellow makers as well who take time to be interviewed and share about their lives and businesses.
And thank you to Ashley from Boldover Ceramics and Lindy from Lindy Garner Ceramics for their assistance on the Whale Talk Podcast Instagram. You are invaluable. Thank you to everybody.